Hello, thank you for joining me today again on the church history trail, and we're continuing in the village of Ravarnette. And Ravarnette village, actually, whenever the 6,000 Huguenots or so came to Ireland, fleeing from the religious persecution by King Louis XIV of France in 1685, many settled in the Lisburn and Ravarnette areas. And this is, as you can see, Ravarnette Gardens, which is leading up into the estate. But this house here at the corner is 83, and this is the house where our family lived. So I lived in this house for 24 years. You used to play tennis over the gates and squash up against the wall, and also there was walls around that, and there was a big basket and other baskets that my dad actually made by hand, which of course have all gone now. And so that's 83 Ravarnette Road, and that was our family house. And I was saved in that house on the 9th of August 1987 at 1:30 a.m. in the morning, where I called upon the Lord for salvation. And so what I would have done then is I would have come out of the house and out the gate towards the wee school, and we would have walked, me and my brother would have walked down to the wee primary school. And I think that's one of my neighbours that is still living in this house. Do you recognise me? Sandra, isn't it? It is indeed. I'm doing a wee video here on Ravarnette Village, Sandra. And you're still actually living in this house then? How long have you been here?
75.
From 75? I was 5 years old then. So I was then when you must have moved in here.
I wondered what you were doing because I didn't recognise you with all the gear. Because I said...
Oh, watch yourself there.
I said to my grandson, he's doing. He's standing peeping through the window. I just wonder what he is doing, you know? Because you never know, there's some on camera.
Aye. No, I have a wee YouTube. You're actually being recorded here, so I hope you don't mind. Is that okay?
Well, I hope I'm getting money for it.
Yeah, I wish I was getting money for it. No, I have a wee YouTube channel on the church history trail, you see, so I go all the different areas and do history. So today I'm in Ravarnette, so I'm sort of like telling them about the way I used to come out of the gate and then just straight down to where the car is down there to the school.
Aye.
For the primary school, and so it was handy, you know.
You might have told me I was
You're okay, Sandra. So you're here some years.
aye, well, sure, he's been living here for some years, so he's 68.
That's wild. And who's in that house now of ours then?
Next door.
Aye.
Well, they're not there at the minute because they're selling up.
Oh, are they selling up? And then Paul lived in that after us for a while, my brother. So he did.
I'm seeing
You know.
Paul then away.
Aye. Yeah, he's doing right. Like, he's not too bad, you know.
What about
He's doing well.
him?
Who's that now?
They call him
John.
John.
Aye, John's dead on as well. John's spot on as well. I'll tell him I was talking to you. In fact, I'll send him the wee video. So,
You should have told me what to say when I even combed my hair this morning. I didn't mind getting done. Where are you living yourself? You living in this for yourself?
I live in Dromore, so still, they know the house where my mum and dad lived.
Why, yes.
Up in there. Well, I better get on here because I want to get this recorded and
Try to get my side.
sure, you both your sides are good. Here, it's good to see you again. God bless. So that was my old neighbour. So it was, and she remembered me. She wondered what I was up to. But I would have come down this way then as a child, me and the brother, and we would have been heading to the primary school. And I have to say, I loved the primary school. Primary school was great because we used to play in the sand pit, and they had wee action men like soldiers and Indians and stuff, and we used to play with them in the sand pit. And so this wee school was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. But up until 1876, there actually had been no school building in the village, and the children had met in Mr. John Sintons' farm, the actual farm loft, with a Miss Seaton as their teacher. And we would have went in through that wee gate there. As you can see, it's where I grew up now, but that would have been thriving with children at one stage whenever I was wee and going to primary school. And so they met in John Sintons' loft the form loft, and as I say, Miss Seaton was the children's teacher. And of course the Seatons lived in Ravarnette House, and in 1876 that all changed, with the children of the village now having their first real school building, which was on a property donated by Mr. Seaton. As I say, he lived in Ravarnette House, and it was actually built in 1789. And so this was the property that he donated. And this is Ravarnette Primary School, as you can see. And this part here actually was a canteen whenever I was going to that wee school. And the milkman used to bring the wee half pints of milk, the wee milk bottles, and all the children got their milk. And we loved the milk, so we did. Don't think they do that now in the schools. It probably cost a fortune. But there used to be a mobile here whenever I was a wee toad, and I was in, the mobile was really more like a play school, to be honest. And I would have went there and played in the sandpit and all, and the sandpit was fantastic. But getting back to Miss Seaton, who was the teacher of the old school, which met in the farmer's loft. Believe it or believe it not, but she was actually paid £15 a year. So she was paid £15 a year. No, sorry, it was actually Miss F. Laurie who was paid £15 a year. She was the first appointed teacher of the school here. Miss Seaton was the teacher of the school at the loft, the farmer's loft. But the first actual teacher here was Miss Mary F. Laurie, and she was paid £15 a year, which is, to us seems nothing, but I suppose that was a lot of money back then. And we used to play then in this playground here, and I can remember my Auntie Isa. She would have come down, and she was on duty here. She had to make sure there was no fights or nothing, and so we all would have played in the playground here, as we called it, at break time and lunch time. And then coming in the morning, we would have went through that gate, as I say, that's all grown up, and we would have come down here around the side of the school, and you could also come in through that gate there, and that was the doorway there. We had all been lined up here as kids, and waiting for 9 o'clock. As soon as it hit 9 o'clock, then the door opened, and in we went. And Mr. Bell, Stanley Bell, was the head teacher back then, so he was. And so that's Ravarnette Primary School. And I can actually remember it was in Ravarnette Primary School where I had my first encounter with a wasp. I must have been about 5 or 6 years of age. But it was actually in the wee mobile that used to be there that I mentioned earlier. And I was sitting in the classroom in my t-shirt, and there was this insect landed on my arm, which I didn't know what it was. And I went to rub it to get it off, and it actually stung me, and I cried my eyes out. And so that was my first encounter with a wasp. And there used to be toilets here as well, and which were whitewashed building, and there used to be like a wee, it was like a wee cubby hole. And when we were playing here in the car park, in the playground here, we would have played the Sweeney. If any of you remember the Sweeney was an old cop series, and we were playing the Sweeney one day, and I was the bad guy, and another guy called Shorty, who we called Shorty, he Trevor Hull actually it was, if I remember rightly, he was the cop, and he caught me, and he threw me into the cubby hole, which is actually we were using as a jail, and my two front teeth hit the wall and disintegrated. And then I ended up having to get crowns in because of that. And so that was back in the day. But also, just across the road here, and of course this is Ravarnette Crossroads. And just across the road then we have what's known as Ravarnette Mission Hall. And you can see Ravarnette Mission Hall. This is Ravarnette Crossroads. And that's the Cairnban Road there that I mentioned in the other wee video. Of course the Williamites would have been camped around this area as well. And as you can see there, this is a Ravarnette Road. And we actually attended the Mission mission hall here when we lived in Ravarnette. And in the early 1900s, Edwin Sinton, again of Ravarnette House, he built a mill reading room. And the purpose of the mill reading room was so that the workers of the mill and the people of the village could come in and read their newspapers. And in January 1910, the Faith Mission held prayer meetings in the hall, and they actually have continued up to the present day, and that wee hall is still in use to the present day. And I was a member of the prayer union here, along with my mum and dad, when we lived in Ravarnette. And today the hall, of course, as it was then, is called Ravarnette Mission Hall, as I will zoom in and let you see the board. As you can see, Ravarnette Mission Hall. But that was actually the mill workers' reading room at the start, before it was the mission hall. And so it's a great part of history here in the village, along with the wee school, and also with the mission hall. Of course, the school's older than the mission hall. Now, the first Faith Mission pilgrims, they held their meetings actually in the school, and the pilgrims actually began their first mission in the village on the 3rd of April, and it lasted until the 22nd of May 1910, but they actually held it in the school. And of course the Faith Mission have had many missions and pilgrims coming to Ravarnette, and they've held missions in the mission hall. And some of the evangelists, actually independent evangelists, that have visited this wee hall were Joe Black, George Bates, Noel Grant, and in more modern times then John Weir. But also the Reverend Sam Workman was meant to have a mission here in this hall, but him and another gentleman, but unfortunately because of illness that didn't happen. And so what actually was arranged then, that Sam Workman would actually preach here on Sunday the 18th of January 1998. And so this wee hall here has a connection with the Reverend Sam Workman, and you can see up above the door there it says, "Prepare to meet thy God," if you can see that. And of course my dad, who was an evangelist, Albert Porter, he preached many times in this wee hall. And also my mum was a member of the prayer union as well. And the Sunday night that my dad gave his life story, his testimony, the place was actually packed with 99 people in it, and so there was almost 100 people there that night. Of course, Jack Hill was the leader of the wee hall back then, and today the leader is Heather Riddick. And I myself also have spoken in this wee hall a number of times. So that's Ravarnette Mission Hall. Of course, you can see Ravarnette House there as well. You can see the chimney of it, at least. That chimney there between those two poles is Ravarnette House, and the hedge on the right hand side leading up the road is part of the hedge of Ravarnette House. And so there's a lot of history here in the village of Ravarnette, and of course it's a lot of personal history and a great personal connection to me. And it's amazing to think that my neighbour Sandra and Hamilton Wilson are actually still living in the same house all these years later, because when I was a child, they were living there, and they're still living here today. So thank you for joining me today on the Church History Trail, and I trust the Lord bless you.